Thank you all for joining. It looks like some people are still rolling in. My name's Quinton Rocke with GoEngineer. So let's see here. My next slide is basically, what is SOLIDWORKS Manage? I know it's a fairly new product. It came out in 2018, so it's been in 18 and 19, and it will be in 2020 coming up in the next month or so when that's released. So it's still a new product, but it's not brand new anymore. It's now 3 versions in almost, and it's been used a while. It is a product that was developed and SOLIDWORKS partnered with and purchased the use of it. So it's not brand new either in that sense. But what it basically is, and this is the marketing slide, I copied and pasted this straight off the website, but it is an expansion on PDM Professional. It can be actually more than that. It kind of sounds like maybe an add-in to PDM Professional or something, or an add-on to it, but and it is even more than that, as you'll see as I go through some of this presentation today. So on the right, you can see the SOLIDWORKS PDM Professional. There's a lot of bullets, a lot of things it can do, but the main thing is it's a file management tool. It's a data management. It's in the name of it. It adjust permissions, and you can have some basic workflows, and we've taken PDM Professional pretty far. I mean, a lot of companies use it for ECOs or engineering change type operations, use it for other documentation than CAD, but it doesn't really branch into what we call sort of PLM functions and other processes. And I'll go through, and PDM Professional is still a great product, and it still probably serves most of your needs today, but what SOLIDWORKS Manage does is it expands on that. You can see that there's some project management module, there's process management items, which you might consider BOMs, one of the common items that you use item management for. And it's a record-based system, more of an item-based system than a file-based system like PDM. And then everything you put in there, we can create dashboards and reports on. So you can do a lot of reporting, whereas in PDM, if you were good with SQL, you could get a lot of the data and reports. And the search tool added a lot to it also, but it wasn't a reporting tool. It didn't spit out reports like you would, and we traditionally use the word reporting. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at SOLIDWORKS Manage. I don't have a lot of PowerPoint slides, so you guys should be happy with me for that. Basically, SOLIDWORKS Manage is kind of a standalone let me kill the slides here real quick. So SOLIDWORKS Manage is very similar to PDM. You've got to log in, it's got users, it's got permissions. So in this case, I have my SOLIDWORKS Manage Vault. Some of that stuff is hidden here, but and of course, you guessed my password is blank, which is my first recommendation as a tech support guy. Don't make your password blank. And it comes into this interface, and this interface is a very familiar interface. I've been in here doing stuff this morning, so I'm already kind of on a certain screen. But you might start out in like a home page. You might have some different dashboards and things that you want to show here. In this case, this is my engineering change dashboard. My default dashboard just has some of my stuff. So this kind of goes into that dashboard and reporting stuff. And I'll jump back and forth through this presentation to this screen, some of the other areas, but I just right now want to give you kind of a familiarity of it. So we have these modules, we call them, the documents and records module, the process module, projects, but really these all kind of interact with each other. It's not just, straightforward that you might not do that. Like a project might reference, PDM documents, it might reference documentation. Projects might have to run through processes, like to complete the project or to start a brand new project. You run through a process and approval to get that project started. So they all kind of interact, as you'll see, but I'm going to kind of touch on them in separate little areas as I go through the presentation as well. The main one is the document records. Here are some just item-based, some record-based stuff. There's no files actually attached to these records for these BOMs. And I have some filters and other things I'll talk about as we go. The big one, here's my Manage Vault. So this is my PDM Vault. So basically I can go straight from here over to PDM. I can show it as images too. It always looks a little nicer to see some of the pictures and stuff if they have the thumbnails working. It's very similar. It kind of almost has an Office feel, like an Outlook feel. If you ever use Outlook, or if you're still using Outlook, you know, you might have those buttons in different sections, like for calendars and things. It's kind of like that feel. When I highlight an item, the bottom half, now we kind of get that PDM feel where there's the properties to this bottom half. So this PDM record has some properties, you know, potentially bill of materials, things like that. I can preview this stuff too, just like you could in PDM. So you'll see a lot of those capabilities in there. These are records too, so a lot of the time when I'm actually doing a lot of editing, I don't do it so much down in the bottom half. I actually open the record in its kind of own window, and you get a lot more capabilities. And this is all controllable, what you see here, what sections. For example, if you don't want to show, you know, where used, which wouldn't be a good one to hide, but if you didn't want to show that, or you didn't want to show the configuration, everything about Manage is very configurable. Almost too much sometimes. That's the half the battle of setting it up, is configuring everything, because it is very configurable. Everything, every tab, I can rename every section. You know, I can build special sections for things that don't exist. Like if you track something different for it, I can have a different set of records and stuff. So it ends up being very configurable, which means it can pretty much fit anything that you need. The other thing that I'm going to do for this presentation is I'm going to be in as admin the whole time, and I'm going to assign things to the admin user so I don't have to be logging out and logging back in as different users. But keep in mind, permissions are everywhere. You know, what tabs I'm able to see, what sections I'm able to see, all that is all permission based. Very much like PDM, you can't do anything if you don't have permissions to do it. So I have full permissions. I've made sure as an admin I have full permissions, but keep in mind that obviously different groups and different levels of people will have different permissions. And even permissions are so much more than what they were in PDM, because like I said, I could have permissions to not see some of these tabs or not see some of these rows and columns and things like that. It's very configurable. So with that said, let's kind of walk through how I might start my day. Basically, I might look at tasks that are assigned to me. In this case, I'm going to my home screen, and I have my dashboards, which I touched on earlier, and we'll go back and forth between that. I have my tasks and other things, other sections that if I make use of it. You know, if I'm a manager, I might want to see tasks, all the tasks assigned to other people. So tasks are a big part of this this process. Like PDM didn't really have tasks. You know, I've done a lot of clever things over the years to make PDM kind of work with tasks, but or putting in something on the data card on PDM that says, you know, was the task completed, and putting a condition in the workflow that says if you don't check that, it doesn't go through. But you didn't really get a tasks, and when you did set those up like that, and kind of some of those workarounds in PDM, you really couldn't assign them either, unless you made a ton of transitions and everybody has their own transition and their own workflow and all that. It was really hard to assign those tasks. You could pick who you wanted to notify, but it was more difficult to assign those tasks. So there's a task here that I put in as a sample task here where they want us to add some items to the bill of materials. So that'll kind of get us started in looking at the bill of materials. If I highlight this task down below, I can see that. And again, I can I just double clicked in this case, open the record. So if somebody put in notes for the task or things I'm supposed to do, I can log, review that. I can actually come in here and log my time used. So if you want to excuse me, if you want to actually look at hours used and you're logging and you're tracking things in that respect, we can, add those in. In this case, I know that I have to just take this assembly and add some items to the bill of materials. So if I highlight that, I can actually open this record or go to this record. So I don't have to find it in my PDM Vault or find it in there. Somebody's already attached this for me when they created the task. So it takes me right over. Notice it drops into my PDM, and you'll know the folders of PDM versus the other folders. And these icons can be changed, but by default, the PDM stuff is there. The other thing you might notice here is all these filters I've created. So I can quickly add filters to things. So if there's certain examples and stuff that I want there, I can quickly add filters. And I have the images turned on. Again, if you don't like those images, we can certainly turn those off. Where was I here? I believe I was on this guy. Was that the main assembly? Actually, I think it was the top level. Well, let's go back and find out. So I go to my tasks, I highlight it. Yeah, it looks like it was just the head assembly. So, another way to get back to it. The other thing I want to point out, before we do the BOM stuff, is you can show this in Explorer. So I just right click and I show this in Explorer. This is a PDM object, remember. So if I just go to it, it's going to open it now in my PDM Vault. So we're not getting rid of PDM, we're expanding on it. Let's see. So question on where files are being stored. So basically, the PDM Vault files are stored still in PDM. That doesn't change. We just reference them, or we kind of add on to them. The other records, it depends on how you do the records. So there's file-based records, and then there's just item-based records, which are just database entries. So if they're file-based records or they have attachments and files, then very similar to how PDM works with the archive data folder, there's a folder for that kind of stuff for Manage also. It'd be on the server level, and then you'd cache it if you opened it locally, that kind of thing. So it works very similar to PDM in that respect. But whereas PDM has some virtual records that are mainly database only, this has a lot more capabilities when it comes to item management and record management that don't have files attached to them. So anyway, this is the SOLIDWORKS build, or the PDM bill of materials. We've used this for years. Great tool. A couple things to point out is I can go the other direction, so I can go right back to open that record in Manage. So once you have Manage added on and in there, you'll also notice that there is a SOLIDWORKS Manage tab here. I won't spend a lot of time in PDM, but I just want to point out that it's very easy to go back and forth in there. Maybe some users hardly ever go into Manage, they just do some CAD work, but they have the capabilities, or they can see the tasks associated to it. So in this case, we know that task that's saying add some wire and some thread lock to it. So if they was involved in any processes, or this is an attachment or reference to any other types of documents in Manage, we can check all that from here. But anyway, so we'll jump back over here. I'm going to go ahead and double click this to open the record, because you see the tabs down below, but you get a little more interface here. Just looking at the interface, this is the Manage properties, but because this is a PDM object, you can also see the data cards here. I do not have it checked out, so that's why things look grayed out right now. But then we have the BOM tab and different tasks, and we already know the tasks, right, assigned to this one. And I'll talk about hopefully, if time permits, get into some of how we might assign tasks, things like that. So we've got our standard bill of materials just based on the SOLIDWORKS on the PDM record. So we've already set this up that every PDM record gets kind of a standard, SOLIDWORKS BOM, we call it. But I want to add to that BOM. So this is one way you might use bill of materials inside of Manage, is just on top of the PDM object or these PDM records for this assembly, I might just use the BOM features in Manage moving forward. I'll show that, and then I'll show another way to use the BOMs here. So to edit this, obviously this is a file-based record, a PDM record. You're going to be editing it. You need to check it out. And you'll notice when I check it out, it brings up that standard PDM checkout dialog. So I'm actually checking out of PDM also because I'm doing this on the PDM record level, if that kind of makes sense here. So once I check it out, and if I jumped back over to PDM, it's now, let's refresh this. It's now showing as being checked out by me. I'm in as the admin. I can edit this bill of materials and just add You can see this is, this is a new interface for a lot of you, but it's still fairly simple when you're actually using it. It's all been set up and configured for me. So some of the ways I can add, and I can choose different sections and different things that I'm allowed to add. I don't have to add everything. So I can actually specify you can only add things to the BOM from these projects or these records, not everything. So obviously I want to be able to add from PDM, but I also have a section here, a library section called commodity. And by the way, there's search and stuff. I've created these quick filters that I like to use, but there's search and other ways to get to this data if you want. Again, if it makes sense, sometimes it's easier to see if I show the pictures also. These columns, everything again is customizable. So I want to add some thread lock. So I'll just say add that a quantity of 1. And then I still have this open. I didn't do add and close. I want to go over to the 16 gauge wire. And this time I want to add maybe a quantity of 3 for 3 feet. This is per foot. So I'll hit add and close. And then what we see is it's added those 2 items to the bottom of the bill of materials. And that completes the task that I had. So that's one way to do it. Now this bill of materials now has that task. So the other way to look at a BOM is actually making it sort of an item itself. In this case, we have like a shipping BOM. This is my scenario, at least maybe a shipping BOM for this product. Again, you can look at it all stuff or go down to the filters or use a search, or you can actually filter even just on the description row here by clicking that. If I just want to add some text to only search for description or number or any of those, there's a lot of ways to find this stuff, but it's fairly simple. I can find it here. So opening up this record, you can see I have a US BOM. There's a bill of materials here already. And I'll just show this real quick, but some of everything you put into Manage can be, you can run reports on. So, what reports are basically pre-built things that you have that you can run, and it spits out a report just like it sounds. In this case, it doesn't necessarily have to look exactly like the BOM, but I'm just doing a bill of materials report on that. And this is just a preview of that report. What you would do is probably send it to a PDF or some other type of document here and spit it out that way. And we'll talk, when we talk about processes a little bit, we can have things that just automatically run these reports and spit them out, kind of like a task in PDM where it creates a PDF or something. So I have the US BOM. So what I've done in this case is I've just created a record called BOMs, and I've put in items in there from that same assembly. I have a European and a Canadian BOM that I need to do that are different than the US BOM. And there's a lot of different things. Again, I can show images if you want to see the images. That sometimes always looks nice in presentations. But so to do this, again, I need to make sure that I have it checked out, and I do have it checked out still from the earlier. But this is a different record. It has no association to it, but it's referencing the items from PDM. So what I might do is let's come in here and say I need to create a bill of materials. So we'll go to this here. We'll edit this BOM. And I want to copy from, rather than starting over, I want to take that US BOM and just make a copy of it here, and then I'll do the edits. So it's very quick to do that. You notice that I can actually pull this from another bill of material record. Doesn't have to be from this one that I've already created. I could pick it from something else. So if if most of my bill of materials have I could pick a project that we've already done, import that bill of materials to this record. It could be completely different if I wanted to. But we're going to go ahead and accept that, and we're going to go ahead and import it. So the things, maybe we just make a few changes here. It doesn't really make, the supplier, we'll just say, it's a different supplier than the other BOM. Maybe, we have to replace this part. Let's choose, let's see, that's bubble tape. Well, let's just throw in another box or something like that. So, 2 boxes or something that needs and no bubble tape. And I can change the quantity. You have effectivity, so maybe this part's only, effective till, I don't know, we'll say the October or something. So again, costs might be different. You can change everything you want now in here and then save that. And, now you have your BOM there. You can even do some things like importing from Excel. I have to edit first to do that. But so if you have like another CAD package or something that you can spit out a BOM in Excel, I can import some of those things. And depending on how you set that up, it can actually look for records that are already in Manage and match those up for you. So you don't have to manually do that. A compare is a great one too. So I'll compare the US BOM to the EU BOM and hit compare, and then we can see the differences or the things that I might have changed between the 2 BOMs. And there's a little key down here at the bottom of what's new, modified, or deleted. I can export this quickly to an Excel document too. So just put it on the desktop or something like that, and then compare. Then it'll ask me if I want to open it, and you can obviously, in Excel, do whatever you need to do with that. Sorting, let's just open it here. It's nice because it puts one BOM on, gives you 3 tabs, the 2 different BOMs and that. But you'll notice in that compare, again, it's a nice interface here, but I didn't have to pick the same bill of materials. I could have picked any bill of material to compare from. I'm just doing the one in this record, the US to the EU, but I could pick up something else. So that's kind of the bill of materials in a nutshell, or some of the ways it will work. One thing I want to point out though is everything can have a BOM. So you'll notice that there's the BOMs for the PDM records. I made just a record called BOMs, and they have bill of materials. Processes can have bill of materials. Projects can have bill of materials. So if we go to our projects tab and look at some of the projects we have, I'll open up, this project here, for example. It can have a bill of materials, different items that we may need to include on there. So that functionality of bill of materials isn't just in one spot. It's anywhere you want to kind of have it on. Any record can have a bill of materials associated, and you can build it the same way I just walked through and built it. Since we're in projects, let's take a look at kind of some of the project stuff here. Again, every project has its own record. It can have some planning. I'm opening this in its own window, and I can expand this full screen and everything as well. But this structure, this stuff is all the different stages of the project. So as I click on this stage, the stuff down below is for potentially this stage. Here's all the tasks that are associated to this stage. Click on the next stage, here's all the tasks. And I can show all tasks from all stages if I want. It's very customizable in that area. The different hours and things that might be logged to it, different dates and stuff of where we want to complete this, different stages. A couple of important things to notice is I can change this. Obviously I have to be an admin and be able to check it out, that kind of stuff. But I don't have to go with just this structure here. If there is something that, halfway through the project we realize we need to add another stage to this, it's very easy to add a stage. You have the move up and move down and indent and all that kind of stuff. You can also assign things like, where is it here? Predecessors. So in order, for this stage to start, the stage 10, which is, the line item above it, if you look at the numbers across the left here, has to finish. So you have things running in parallel and some that have to finish sort of in a linear fashion here. And, if I am an admin, I can move some of these things around, that kind of stuff, change it if I need to. And do that. Again, it can have above materials if there are certain items. It can have related files attached to it, project deliverables. On the main properties tab, you can have, whatever you want to grab here, whatever type of information you want to put, again, can be put in there. And at different stages and stuff, there's more information that can be added. So tasks are a big part of that project. Here's all the tasks for the entire project. Again, I can do it. If there's some that have been completed, I can hide those as they get completed and go through those. So how a project gets created, And oh, by the way, I could run reports on this. So if I have all project details, I can run a report. So I guess I can't run it on this one, but oh no, it still worked. But anyway, the project's not very far along, so a lot of it's blank, but I can run projects still through this, through reports. So I can report again on anything that gets put into PDM. And then you can decide what to do with those reports, whether you put them to a PDF or they're just something you look at while you're in Manage or any other kind of document. So, assuming I have permissions, which, again, I do, I can do a new project, and there are some required fields here. I've got to assign a project manager. I don't know, we'll just pick someone off my list here. I've got to give it a title, new webinar project, maybe something like that. What type of project, pull downs, those types of things can be available. We'll just do engineering to order. But, if I do new product, notice some other stuff pops in, different things can pop in based on how you've set this up. Again, very configurable. Those are the only required things. If I'm going to put in stuff like, estimated hours, start date, all those types of things, obviously, let's put it out a couple months. Started today is fine. We don't know completion, maybe estimated costs, those types of things. But as soon as I go ahead and save this main brand new project, now I'm actually creating the project in Manage. I've saved it. I haven't canceled out of it. And then it brings up this template. And I can actually switch this out later on, but obviously I might erase what I put in there if I switch it out. But there's different templates that I've already set up and predefined. These are built by me. These are not out of the box. Out of the box, you just do a new project and it's got pretty much blank. I could make it very simple, like a single stage, different product releases, those types of things in there. So I'll just pick this first one on the list just for our sources. And then what that does is when you go to these planning, then I have this template where it created everything. It has pre-built tasks on each of these different stages that are potentially things I need to do. So in this case, the project has 3 tasks in the design state. I might assign that to a specific user. And then that's another big difference with PDM is I'm actually assigning things to people. Whereas in PDM, you can notify a group that they should do this or only give permissions for a group to be able to do things in certain states, but you're not really assigning that. So I'll go ahead and assign it. I'm going to assign it to myself, but obviously I could assign it to different people and stuff in there. But just for the sake of this, so I don't have to log out and log back in to complete these things, I'm assigning it to, as the admin user, I'm assigning it to the admin user type thing. So some other things I can do, is I can attach files, and project deliverables might be, what's delivered, the files out of there, the differences in the stage properties, the different tasks, everything that we can do in there. Again, I can create tasks at any time. So in this case, if I needed to do a new task, I can hit the new. I'm just right-clicking, but I can hit the new button, create a new task. Let's say, the design stage also needs flow simulation review or something like that. And I can say, that's going to be, you get 32 hours to do that or whatever, time you want. Any notes, I can put attachments. So if I want to make sure that it's applied to, maybe this PDM, this file or something like that, or I don't know if I have some data in one of these other folders. Yeah, we'll pick this. Looks like the same file. I can attach that to the task, and then as a user, and I signed it. If I go to my task now, when I go in there, I'm going to see this is what I'm supposed to do. Let's just say test flow through this washer, which obviously is doesn't make a lot of sense, but use your imagination of what you can do with this kind of stuff. And I can assign that task in there because I just added this brand new. So the template for the project has a bunch of pre-built stuff. These are very common for every project that we do, but some projects include tasks that we didn't know of when we started, or we need to adjust it. So we can add these tasks in there. I can assign it to someone. In this case, I'll just save and close it for now. I forgot to do this on the last one, but I could, like, let's say I've produced the 3D models, I've attached them to deliverables or wherever I need to attach them. I can mark that as completed. So in this case, I'll say, yes, I want to complete that produce 3D models. And once you've done that, it's now 100% complete. And we'll take like maybe, let's go to another one. Let's see, this one we'll do a little differently. This one had 16 hours there. So instead, what I'll do is I'll assign it, if you want to use it that way, I'm going to say, 8 of the hours are used. And I should put in some comments. Only halfway through, whatever. Obviously, be a little better than that, but so now that one has some time or some percentage. Did I not save that? I don't think I did. But anyway, so that is one of the things that you can do, and then you can calculate, all the completed tasks in there. So what'll happen is, some of these things will now start showing, change the percentage of where they're completed and how far they've gone if I save this properly. But so TechPubs has that. This project has some of these tasks. The other thing with, let's just go through a few more things on projects here. Is there's a task board that you can show, so I can see all the tasks at once and who's been assigned to them. If they have, I don't have a lot of pictures for people, but I could add, click to add another task in this area. So if you like looking at it kind of as the stage, the numbers again correspond to the numbers of the stages there, I can go ahead and look at it like that. Another thing about projects is, let's just select a bunch of projects at once. I can do project planning for all those projects, and then here's the overall, not the individual stages of each one, and there's that black line telling me how far into the project, how many tasks have been completed, what stage we're at, that kind of stuff. But if I notice a bunch of things, I can, assuming I'm an admin, I can move some of these around to say, okay, this project takes priority over this one, let's push this one out, this one's running late, those types of things, and reorganize everything. All right, so let's see here. Again, you can run reports. Some of the things like I've added here that are, there's some of these tabs are out of the box, whether you choose to use them or not, and you can rename them to whatever you want. But I've also added a few extra things, like these are the project issues for all the different projects, some of the risk management things. You'll notice the colors. I forgot to point this out earlier too, but a lot of the colors, they're all configurable. So if it's like maybe something with a risk value of 6 to 10, it only shows up in this yellow, but anything over 10 shows, in a different color, and anything 20 and above shows in red or whatever. So you can kind of do a lot of conditional highlighting when you're looking at these grids and those types of things as well. Again, filters, all that stuff is very easy. So that kind of is, projects in a nutshell. I like to think of them as a container to things, maybe some files and stuff that we do, but files can be referenced by multiple projects. Oops, sorry, I hit the mute on there on my mic real quick there. But projects can be, a file can be used in multiple projects. Maybe you have common files, maybe they're bill of materials, that kind of thing. So just keep in mind. You can use it for however you like. The other big area in SOLIDWORKS Manage is processes. So I go to the processes, I just basically set up a few here for this demonstration, but this is kind of a demo here. Engineering change is one of the biggest processes that we usually would run into, but processes can be for anything that you have a process to do, not necessarily all on PDM stuff, but anything. So for example, you might have a process, and that's this one here for new product introduction. You might have a process to get approved to make a project. In this case, this new process one of the outputs of this process is to create a project. So if it gets approved, it creates a project. So I'll go into this interface here just to kind of give you an idea of the process and the different things that we can do through there. Obviously, there's a new concept. There's some different gates. Is it an express project or is it not an express? Does it have to go through some other items before it can get, to create the project? So I could actually, in this case, if it's an express one, I could have it go through here on the output of this. When it finishes this process, it creates a new project. And potentially I have it questioning, who's going to be the project manager and all that, and that will all transfer over to the new project. Looking at our ECR, so I request an ECO, and then that can turn into an do an ECR request, which turns into an ECO, which might turn into an ECN or something if you go to that level. These could probably be one process that does everything, but in this case, I have kind of a simple engineering change request process. You start out here, somebody reviews it, goes through here. Do we accept, basically, are we saying yes, move forward with it, or no, we don't need to assign this or anything like that? Let's close out that request is denied. Once they get completed, they get marked as completed. I have a few in there as well. So looks like, let's see, ECR, I have, okay, so this one right here, very similar to that task. Basically it's saying there's some problems with our miter saw. Let's go ahead and, take a look at that and change that. And notice I do have a change order. I haven't approved this one yet, so I haven't gone through and done that. So we'll just kind of open this in its own window. I can say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and accept this process. So I'm taking ownership basically of this stage in the process. Again, I can assign this to other people if I need to. Maybe only a manager can do that kind of stuff, but I'm in as admin again. At any given time, if I want to see where the history is or that information, so I can look at that again and see, okay, we're at this stage, that we're at the start stage right now. I haven't sent it to the next stage yet. Maybe I need to create a task in here, a new task again to, I don't know, let's just say recreate operating process. So this thing is failing. It's saying it's not holding tolerance when cutting at there. So I'm saying, recreate that operating process, run FEA, do what you need to find out why it's breaking or why it's slipping and not cutting accurately for our miter saw. I can attach, at this point if I need to, I can attach the assembly. I don't know why it's breaking or which part in the assembly is breaking, so I'm just going to attach the entire thing for now. Where is our miter saw? I can do that. Again, I could have used a search. That's probably an easier way to find it, but let's just attach this miter saw to that. Double click, open the record. I'm just going to say add that and close. So now that shows up in there. So if I was to assign this, I'm going to accept it as my own. But if I was to assign this, that person knows to go to that assembly and start, finding out why it's breaking or why it's not holding the tolerance as we expect it to. So I could save and close that. Again, looking at some of these other tasks, maybe I need one of the tasks on this process. So these were pre-built into this. Potentially is, run a feasibility study, whether this is okay to do it. Notice in this case, it has some other information of what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to attach the documents and things to that. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that as complete, or I could, what I should do is close this, probably go into this record here. Let's turn that off. Go to the properties, and maybe I need to attach the feasibility study there. Or maybe it's a reference or a related file, some supporting documentation. So you can put it in different areas. So in this case, it's not the affected item necessarily. It's just, some study we need to run in there. So that was just from my desktop, a file that I've taken outside. Now I'm committing it into the manage. And then I can go to that task and say, mark that as complete. And now that one's at 100%. Again, I can log hours towards that task or just mark it as complete. In this case, for time's sake, I'm just going to do that. The recreating the operating process, maybe somebody's done that. I noticed, I put this in obviously in advance, but I can have comments. They can be like rich text, so I'm pasting pictures in there, that kind of stuff of what might be happening there. So the pedestal bearing is the problem, we think, and that needs to be redesigned in there. So on the properties tab, yes, let's say high feasibility we can do this, and it's going to cost us, $10,000 or something like that, whatever it might cost. So I'm putting in some of that information. I'd send this to the next stage of it. Actually, now that I know it's the pedestal bearing, let's go ahead and just add that. This time I'll use a search instead of trying to find it. Bearing. I think these are the same. It's probably both just the right and left half of it or something there. So let's just grab that one. Again, I can double click and open the record at any time. I can add and close it. I can use the preview if I'm not quite sure. I can turn on the images, but okay, that's the right one. Let's pretend. So I'll add that. So now that shows up there. So this is kind of a big part too that you don't normally get in PDM, where you get the affected items of an ECR. What we do in PDM is we copy and paste as reference, whereas in here we kind of are attaching it to this process as the affected item. So I've got one document in there. What else might be affected though is wherever this might be used, right? So I could actually add some related records to this. So things that are already related potentially to this file. I can see this is used in this assembly. So I need to add that assembly also. I could see maybe, this is used in, maybe there's some documentation for this one or something like that, or drawings. I can add a lot more things to it. I don't have to pick them up. If they're associated, I can quickly add to them here. So I'll save that. I'll send it to the next stage. You sure you want to do that? Yes, assuming I have permissions. So now the next stage is, somebody starts reviewing this and making, actually doing some of the work. So I can pick to assign it to someone. I'm just going to assign it again to the admin user, but you can assign this to someone else, and they're the only person that can okay that next stage, basically. They'd have to log in, or an admin would have to assign it to someone else before we can go past that next stage. I can pick multiple people, so I'm just adding the admin user, but I could certainly add multiple people, and when you do, there's some options whether you want those to be in parallel or sequential, and then you can move up and down, so you can pick what order they have to go in, that kind of stuff. Once I do that, notice there are, let's expand this out a little bit, there are more options here. So different things that we need to put in open up as we go through the stages, more properties per stage that show up there. The decision on this one. So I'll go ahead and accept this stage. Now I can come in here and say it's approved or rejected. Let's say it's, approved. Looks good, whatever there. Some of this information is grayed out, but as I, save this stuff and send it to the next stage, it's going to complete that. So obviously there'd be a lot of engineering work that needs to be done in the meantime on these files, but I'm just kind of pushing through quickly for the presentation here. I go ahead and submit that, and it kind of seems like it goes away there. Remember, I, may have already completed that. So basically that was done. That engineering request was done. So, I can find it. Obviously, I don't have that many in there, but I can do searches. I can figure out ways to get to it. What it did, though, is it created the ECO. So the output of my request, if it gets approved, is to create an ECO. And then the ECO, if we go to this record, notice it attached the file. It brought a lot of that information over. So it's now that ECO has all that information in there. And what you might do if you actually need to print things out is you might run reports on these, set up some reports for each one of these sections. So if there are things that you want to have like a report, not just looking at it in this interface, which has everything, but you want it in kind of a nicer, clean PDF or something, you create reports on those types of things. And then this process now is a process, and it goes through. And we can look at this process is a little more involved of the different stages and things in here. I can accept this process. It goes through. I didn't show this before, but in the other one, you can have at each stage, you can have different notes. So if a user is not sure what they're supposed to do, you can put in notes and stuff. So this is just, copied and paste maybe from a Word doc or whatever of the telling people what they're supposed to put in, what is express type ECO versus a standard ECO does, the differences between the two, that kind of stuff. So if I accept this, I can now come in here and say, okay, these are the ones there. I have this expanded a little too big. Let's bring it down a bit. But so now I can, you know, pick on this. Let's bring that back, and I know that what I'm doing when I'm choosing standard versus express. You know, express might be a little quicker. Any of this information, what do I want to do for the different use as is in the field, and anything that we have, you know, on order, let's scrap that. And again, who do you want to assign it to? I'll make it simple, assign it to myself, go to the next stage. Yes. And now, you know, whatever the next stage is, if I need to attach files, I need to start working on it. Again, I can always look at the process information to see, you know, where I'm at and what the next stage notes are here. So now it's in ECO, it's in work in progress. It can do that. What this also does is it can change, I don't know where I put this, but it can change the output of these things, or the different stages can actually change the states in PDM. So in PDM, this may have, now that we've accepted this and pushed it through, it may have taken it from a release stage to, you know, an in work or under change stage back in PDM. So I don't know if I have this correctly, but there's that bearing pedestal. So now it's in under change. So it's actually changing the states for me in PDM. So now people can go into PDM, do the work, fix the part, whatever they need to do, update the documentation if that's part of it, and, you know, check it back in. And then they don't change the state maybe. Maybe you let this change the state. So when this ECO gets completed, it pushes it back to released and, you know, revs it as Rev B or something, whatever rev it's on now, goes to the next rev. So it's kind of again, a short overview of processes. There's a whole lot more things. I've seen processes to obsolete projects, or obsolete designs. We have a process for that. So we create it in here that it has to be followed and assigned. Somebody has to review and blah, 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 till we get to it. Maybe there's a budget approval process. Maybe there's, you know, transmittal processes, maybe approved for production. So we approve for development, then we approve for production, those types of things. Really, the sky's the limit on what you can do with these things. As you can see, you know, this one was, again, a little bit more in depth than that EC one, but the outputs of these processes can be all kinds of things. You know, at each one of these stages, the output could be that I'm checking, you know, changing the state of files in PDM. And if PDM set, you know, when I release a file to create a PDF, it can still do that, you know. So you could potentially simplify your PDM workflows and do a lot of this type of management inside of Manage. A couple more things. I see we're getting close to time here. For those of you who still stick around, I guess I wasn't sure if it was 30 minutes or 60 minutes, so thank you for sticking around if I went too long. But a couple things just more on the dashboard stuff. These dashboards are completely set up and customizable. So in this case, you know, I have that engineering change dashboard. I want to see all the things that are currently pending review for ECRs. They're filterable too. So if I selected this one, you know, you'll notice some of the stuff changes down below based on what I have selected. I can clear the filters. Here's this bottom half is about all the closed ECRs. You know, I could do it by different regions and see all the closed ones by regions and different lists. I have a small dashboard on the PDM content. What's, you know, how many files are in each stage and that kind of stuff. I can do reporting on that. What's cool about this reporting is it's not just PDM and Manage. If there's another database, I can actually use this tool to report on it. You know, obviously it has to be, we can't report on every single database that's ever out there, but depending on, you know, common things like SQL and Excel and those types of databases, you know, more of the common database applications, we can actually report on that. So some stuff might be PDM content. You can see I have a project, so I've created some test ones, but, you know, here's a project dashboard to see what's going on with projects, where we are, what are the tasks, who's assigned, all that kind of stuff. These things, every time you click on them, refresh, but if you were actually to like put this on the screen somewhere, maybe in the shop or something like that, you can actually have these things set to auto refresh every X amount of seconds or minutes or whatever. Right now I just click on it that way. And then these things also can be, all the stuff that I gathered here is just information in these databases. So I can run reports and spit stuff out as well. All right. That was quite a bit of stuff. Manage, I haven't even really scratched the surface of what Manage can do and how you can configure it, but I wanted to give you kind of an idea of what Manage is capable of with this webcast. Thank you all for attending. If you like what you saw or you want to learn more on any specific area or just have a ton of questions, feel free to reach out anytime. And we look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you.